We often say here on the show, it's fascinating who gets an award and who doesn't. And then, of course, there are the problems attached with said awards. One in particular individual was none other than a very favourite star of the 1930s and early 40s. She bounced back to prominence all thanks to radio in the 1960s. As ever, let me explain. Hi, good morning. Neil Sean here. Nice to see you. As ever, thank you for joining me. Yes, I know. You all right today? Are we recovered? Yes. Well, what have you been doing? That's what I want to know. Well, you're exhausted. I'm exhausted. Yes, I know. It's been a long week, hasn't it? Has it been a long week for you? Absolutely. It just gets harder and harder. Do you wake up some days and think, now, what day is it? Do you? And then you have to look at your phone or your clock or put the TV on and think, oh, it's Wednesday, oh, it's Thursday. So, every day just blends because you're at such a speed, don't you? I know, need to take some time out. And let's have a sit down. Shall we have a sit? No, we better do this, I suppose. Back as ever to your breaking royal story of the day. She was one of the biggest stars of the 1930s and 40s. Jessie Matthews, of course, for many people, was simply Mrs. Dale's Diary, that big radio serial of the 1960s. Do you remember the catchphrase? I'm terribly worried about Jim. Now, Jessie became, as I say, a megastar, and there is a plaque up in London in Soho, where she was born, in the very heart of Soho, in fact, which was unveiled by Ruthie Henshaw, the musical theatre actress, and Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber. He was a huge fan. Apparently wanted his former wife, Sarah Brightman, to play Jessie Matthews on the stage, and you can see a similarity, I'm sure you'll agree. What's interesting, though, is that Jessie herself never really understood why she only received an OBE. She really wanted to become a Dame of the British Empire. But then when you dig a little bit deeper, you can understand why the late Queen Mother was so reticent to do this. You see, way back in the 1930s, she'd enjoyed quite a few, shall we say, harmonious dates prior to Mrs. Wallis Simpson with the then King. That's right. And apparently people were very, very concerned about an actress moving in onto the British monarchy or into the British monarchy. How times change, eh? But you see, Jessie was seen as a bit of a scandalous person, already being married, and of course appeared in some rather, shall we say, indelicate productions on London's West End. Now, she did manage to overcome that particular problem. But then there were future problems because one of her very big films, a J.B. Priestley adaptation, had a royal premiere. But because of Jessie's past alongside the former king, that's right, well, she wasn't presented to Queen Mary, even though there was a royal premiere. She was just smiled at, but she wasn't allowed to shake hands. Now, according to a very well-placed source that knew Jessie Matthews incredibly well, once she got the OBE, she thought, well, this is the next step. I'm bound to get the nod for the damehood. Now, what happened was, when she didn't get the nod for the damehood, this is around about 8-9 years later, she signed on the dotted line to play the infamous Wallis Simpson's aunt in the ITV adaptation of Edward and Mrs. Simpson. This naturally infuriated the late Queen Mother. Remember, she'd lived through all of this debacle and was having none of it. And according to that very well-placed source, she made sure that Jessie Matthews really had no chance of becoming a dame. And as I say, I've got this from a very, very well-placed source at the particular time. So when we look at royal history and we think about people that are in there now, and of course all the things that they do, say, and sort of shake up, shall we say, the establishment, as I've often said here on the show, people have done it before, far bigger with far more prominence. Jessie Matthews did remain a star, but of course she's forgotten by many people simply because it's such a long time ago. And more importantly for Jessie Matthews, her time really was slightly tarnished by those associations. She played a good part in Edward and Mrs. Simpson. It is online, have a look. But as she said, she finally felt, well, what's to lose? And I might as well upset the old dear once and for all. Now, who could she have possibly been speaking about? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.